going, guys.
Yeah.
Looks like you're in the finals. Ma'am, for the great taste that won't fill you up and never let you down, make it a Bud Light.
You're the defending ladies pool champion?
Yes, I am.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, getting some renovations done in the home office. So I'll be kind of shooting from various different locations this week. But I want to first celebrate. You all did great over this weekend as Bud Light, InBev, and the Anheuser-Busch products continue to decline across the map. Now, today the stock is down, but to be fair, most of the market's down, including its competitor, Coors Light. However, what's interesting is we've got some new people speaking out against it. Now, up until now, Donald Trump really hasn't said anything about Bud Light or Anheuser-Busch. Many have probably accurately predicted that it's because there's a lot of money, financial backing that that happens from Bud Light, Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch. And so, he's been hesitant to say, no, I don't know that for sure, obviously. But here's an interesting from over the weekend. A quote, former President Trump weighed in on the Bud Light controversy on Sunday. In a True Social post, he wrote, promoting a book that calls to defund leftist woke companies. Trump called out Anheuser-Busch, the parent of Bud Light, in his social media post on Sunday while promoting the Great Patriot Protest and Boycott book. Conservative critics in recent months have called the boycott and protest Bud Light after, of course, working with Dylan Mulvaney, partner with the company in a sponsored post, meaning Trump got paid to say this, but he probably didn't have to call out Bud Light. Quote, it's time to beat the radical left at their own game. Money does talk. Anheuser-Busch now understands that. Great new book by Wayne Allen Root. Buy your copy today. Now, of course, Anheuser-Busch CEO has now told investors last week that the partnership was not a formal campaign. And if you remember, they also went out of his way to call it misinformation. Now, I wonder what kind of people are always using the word misinformation these days. Now, I'm not saying there isn't misinformation out there. There certainly is. However, interestingly enough, the left seems to call anything that's inconvenient misinformation or propaganda or fake news. But now the CEO is getting even more backlash. And by the way, if you've been following the news, I reported this on Friday. Now, since it's such a disaster for Anheuser-Busch, because LGBTQ bars are now boycotting it, making headlines this Monday. Now, quote, he still doesn't get it. Anheuser-Busch CEO blames social media misinformation for Bud Light boycott, which has led to a 26% drop in sales, as he insists that the partnership was just one post, not an advertisement. Well, to be fair, they're the same thing. He's trying to play semantics here, or he's trying to, minimize it. But the fact of the matter is, money exchanged hands in exchange for promotion. Therefore, it was an ad. Now, if you're saying, well, it wasn't a sustained campaign and we only paid him once to do it, doesn't really change anything. And again, the CEOs are still refusing to take any kind of responsibility as their sales continue to drop. The CEO doubled down on his claim that Dylan was never a partner with the American Beer Company, and said the cans featuring the face were never going to be on sale for the general public. But here's the thing. This is not what people were worried about. People weren't worried about the cans being for sale. People were worried that the spokesperson is an insult to women. The spokesperson is somebody who makes a mockery of women. He instead, of course, blamed an outside ad agency, which we talked about last week, for the advertisement, saying it was not approved by Bud Light executives. Now, the company will now triple its marketing budget this summer and give $500 cash bonuses to its drivers, retails, and salespeople as it tries to recover from the boycott. What a lot of people aren't talking about is, the people that were hurt by this are everyday people that are probably apolitical, right? They're the distributors, the drivers, all these type of things. They didn't ask for this conversation. They didn't want this conversation. It was thrust upon them. And what I think is interesting is that Budweiser doesn't seem to appreciate that fully. Sure, giving them $500 is nice, but have you seen how far $500 even goes these days? I was just talking to somebody the other day. We're out to lunch and we got 2 sub sandwiches, 2 chips, and 2 sodas, and it was $24 and some change. Now, I know I'm getting older now. I'm 40, but like $24 for 2 sub sandwiches? And it's not like I had filet mignon. I had ham. Okay? So $500 isn't exactly the grand gesture that it seems like. Now, here, according to Fox, the 3 likely ways that will actually end. First, surrendering to the left. Forget the slogan, go woke, go broke. Almost every major corporation around the world has embraced leftist attitudes. It's called ESG or Marx. Corporations took a sharp left turn. For the CEO or his replacement, to turn right would be a huge risk. It's much easier to just go along and get along. That's the path of least resistance. That's where most celebrities and where marketers tell them young future drinkers are. The fight has already escalated with Chicago's Two Bears Tavern Group, owner of 4 different LGBTQ bars, criticized Budweiser for the abandonment and its treatment of Mulvaney. The check cleared as far as I know. Now Budweiser is facing boycotts on both sides. Bud bosses jumped smack dab in the middle of the culture wars. If they pick a side, they risk offending the other. Well, I think the reality is that they did pick a side, right? Which one to choose? The one with the most corporations, media, and celebrities, or the one with their customer base? They are likely to replace the Clydesdale with My Little Pony, more likely to do that than go against the corporate tide. Yeah, I'd probably agree. Now, the other alternative, the long shot, is surrendering to the right. Asking businesses to do the right thing is like asking President Joe Biden to enforce the border. Both might do what you want, but they hate you, and the only reason they might listen is out of half interest. If Budweiser sides with customers, that's all that matters. Bud Light keeps trying to placate beer drinkers without making any changes. Now, to be fair, they did put 2 people on leave, fire the marketing agency, add more advertising. I'd say they're doing a lot, but they still haven't owned it. They released 2 bogus commercials designed to bring conservative beer drinkers back to the brand. The first brought in the Clydesdales and tells of a beer rooted in the heart of America. The story says it's bigger than beer and praises generations willing to remember, not really the corporate message they wanted to send. Bud Light execs are terrified that people will realize this fight is indeed bigger than the beer and the future of everything America believes. And yes, customers remember, and Bud Light doesn't want that. The second commercial was even more ridiculous. It was just a bunch of phony TV friends drinking Bud Light in the rain with Chicken Fried by the Zac Brown Band playing in the background. Well, we saw how that worked. They were both downvoted into oblivion. Sooner or later, it's going to dawn on someone at Budweiser or their bosses at Anheuser-Busch that conservative beer drinkers aren't the idiots that marketers think they are. The only way to win them over is to apologize, kick the insanity to the curb, and go back to normal. If you're a betting person, and I am, this is the long shot bet. Budweiser would rather triple its ad budget to sucker its customers back in than actually win them over with honesty. That's really their plan, not to address the crisis, just bombard us with more fake friends and chicken fried BS. That's correct. That is the plan that they are currently on. The third option is the crash and burn scenario. This result is more likely than it should be. Inertia takes hold, and Budweiser execs, their eventual replacements, and even their corporate bosses are all afraid to pick a side. Much like New Coke, they let the product line just die. This time, they throw marketing and corporate support into a new light beer, or maybe more than one. Imagine they get savvy and try to segment the market. Come up with a super patriotic brand for old Bud Light drinkers and a woke brand for the Dylan crowd. It might work, Or the company might end up ceding the light beer market to its competitors by the time they get around to taking action. Execs are already wondering how many of those who switch will even be coming back. It's not like Bud Light tastes that good in the first place. I mean, yeah, I'd buy that. I mean, if you look at it this way too, over the weekend, LGBTQ plus bars boycott Bud Light for abandoning Dylan. It shows how little they care. Now, I was not as informed that Bud Light was actually pretty popular in the LGBTQ community. So you see, this is from Pink News, obviously. So we saw this long post come out making national headlines. And if one thing is true about the LGBT group and their allies, is they are extremely well organized and they are extremely loud online. Saying things like, we must hold brands accountable if they take active steps against LGBTQ equality, visibility, and safety. Now, I'm not sure that's what they did, but, you know, for Dylan's part, they're all in now saying, you see this kind of sorry right-wingers, most U.S. beer drinkers support campaigns like Dylan's. That's actually not true. If most of them did, you wouldn't have had a 26% and growing drop in sales. You wouldn't have empty lines at the Boston Red Sox game. You wouldn't have grocery stores piling up with cans of Bud Light. I'm not saying everybody's abandoned them. I still see people drinking it. But this floundering, this action or no action, is probably more damaging. They could have just ripped the Band-Aid off 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry, a month ago, and just sided with the left like we all know they're going to do anyway. Instead, they've just prolonged this, and damaged their reputation far more. Or they could have sided with the right, let the left kick themselves out, and then by now they'd be back to business. But again, they are literally crippled by fear. And that's the environment that a lot of these woke activists and woke investors, don't forget the investors, these are people that will pump money, hedge funds and stuff, that pump money into these woke companies to try and offset. You do your ESG, you file your ESG score, then suddenly you get a lot more investors. It's all linked.